In the previous two lectures, I dwelt on the general discussions with regard to tragedy, its traditions, and the different kinds of tragedy. Today, in this period, from now onward, Raymond Williams focuses on the history of tragedy. Tracing the history of tragedy, Raymond first highlights the difference between the classical and medieval classical tragedy and medieval. I once again repeat this line. Tracing the history of tragedy, Raymond first of all highlights the difference between classical and medieval. I hope you already know what is meant by classical. Classical signifies something very old, or you can say it classifies or it connotes something of great importance. So this is the literal meaning of the word classical. So tracing the history of tragedy, Raymond first highlights the difference between classical and medieval. Medieval is Middle Ages. Classical tragedy is unique, but not all equally good. There have been many great tragic writers, Greek tragic writers, but they are not all equally good. Out of 300 Greek plays by the three Greek plays, Aeschylus है, of Sophocles and Euripides. So out of these three great plays, out of these 300 Greek plays, only 32 plays survive. This is so because the reproduction of Greek tragedy is not possible because its uniqueness is not transferable. Uniqueness might mean something specific about Greek tragedy. There is another problem. There is no systematic Greek philosophy. There is difference between three major writers, Aeschylus, Euripides, and Sophocles. I don't know whether you have read these three plays or these three playwrights or not. If you read them, you will immediately notice that they are very different from each other, based on myths. Now, what is myth? Myths are a story handled from olden times, especially concepts or beliefs about early history of race. Different Greek tragic writers are based on different myths. Myths जो है ये पुराने ज़माने में, in olden times, there used to be stories taken from olden times, especially concepts or beliefs about early history of a race. तो ये भी एक चीज़ है कि Greek plays are based on myths. Different Greek tragic writers are based on different myths. So it is difficult to formulate a coherent philosophy of tragedy. ये भी आप नोट कीजिएगा कि in Greek tragedy there is no coherent, there is no definite philosophy of tragedy. One differs from the other. Then the Greek tragedy ये सब ग्रीक ट्रेजिडी के बारे में बता रहा है कि क्या इसकी कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स क्या है. और इवन द ग्रीक ट्रेजिडी themselves differ from one another. Greek tragedy is inimitable. Inimitable means not copying, not not in a position to copy. Greek tragedy is inimitable because of its dramatic form. It is essentially choral. You understand choral? I have already explained. कि choral is ये choral is the other day I explained it in the class कि जिसके अंदर chorus हो. Chorus I have already explained कि when a group of characters speak in favor of one thing or the other, उसी को chorus कहा जाता है. Greek tragedy therefore rests on the relation between the protagonist and chorus. This is also a very important point. You will read and you will ask me tomorrow in the evening. Next, ये है, this is all about Greek tragedy कि उसके अंदर क्या क्या फ़र्क है. सब ग्रीक ट्रेजिडी दे आर नॉट आइडेंटिकल, दे आर डिफरेंट. और इस डिफरेंस की वजह ये है कि देयर इज़ नो फिक्स्ड. ग्रीक फ़िलासफ़ी बहुत डिफ़र करते हैं. मिथ्स जो है, देयर आर ग्रीक प्लेज आर बेस्ड ऑन मिथ्स. मिथ्स आई हैव ऑलरेडी एक्सप्लेन्ड. और तीसरी वजह यह है कि ग्रीक ट्रेजिडी जो है, इट इज़ नॉट इमिटेबल, इट इज़ इनइमिटेबल because of its dramatic form. ये आपको जब प्ले पढ़ेंगे तो आपको अंदाज़ा होगा कि what does Raymond Williams means by dramatic form. It is essentially choral. Greek tragedy is therefore rests on the relation between the protagonist and the chorus. उसके बाद after that Raymond Williams discusses medieval tragedy. ग्रीक ट्रेजिडी डिस्कस कर लिया. medieval tragedy, medieval एज किसको कहते हैं? medieval एज जो है वो चौसर के एज को कहा जाता है. द एज ऑफ चौसर, that is known as medieval age. तो उसके ज़माने में क्या कंडीशन थी प्लेस की और स्पेशली ट्रेजिडी की, उसके बारे में उसने कुछ कहा है. द medieval belief, it is said, was not conducive to the rise of tragedy. ये medieval belief जो है, it was not favorable to the rise of tragedy. This approach is not true. लेकिन वो खुद कह रहा है कि this approach is not true. The medieval conception of tragedy seems to be in the tradition of Greek tragedy. जी. उसके बाद it is about the fall of rich kings and great lords. It is about the fall of an individual king or lord. Greek plays के अंदर आपको यही चीज़ मिलेगी. He is not a representative of the whole community. In Greek tragedy, the king is looked upon as the representative of the country. His action was of public and metaphysical significance. The range of medieval tragedy is thus limited. This change is because of the change in the relation between spiritual and temporal. Spiritual, so you understand, temporal, worldly. In the Greek culture, the two were closely related to each other. जी, ग्रीक कल्चर में ये जो स्पिरिचुअल और टेम्पोरल है, they were not separated, they were combined together. The fall in medieval tragedy is due to crime. For example, ये बता रहा है कि medieval tragedy के अंदर जो fall होता है character का, that is because of the crime. For example, the fall of Satan. Satan के fall की वजह क्या है? हाँ? Satan के fall की वजह ये है कि he disobeys God, and therefore God throws him away from so the medieval was not conducive not to the rise of tragedy. This approach is not true. The medieval conception of tragedy seems to be in the tradition of Greek tragedy. दूसरी बात वो ये कह रहा है कि आम तौर पर ये ख्याल तो किया जाता है कि medieval tragedy जो है या medieval belief जो है it was not conducive to the rise of tragedy, और उसकी वजह यही है कि वहाँ उस ज़माने में sin commit किया गया था and उसकी वजह से God expelled Satan. It is about the fall of rich kings and great lords. It is about the fall of an individual king or lord. He is not a representative of the whole community. In Greek tragedy, the king is looked upon as the representative of the country. His action was of public and metaphysical significance. The range of medieval tragedy is thus limited. This change is because of the change in the relation between. In Greek culture, the two were closely related to each other. The fall in medieval tragedy is due to the crime. For example, the fall of Satan is because of the sin, that of Adam, misgovernance, trusting his wife, Antiochus, depending upon his wife, Antiochus, pride, and ये सब वजूहात थी medieval tragedy के अंदर fall की वजह. ये कहीं पर जो है वो Satan ने commit किया कोई, कहीं पर Adam ने, कहीं पर misgovernance ने, और इसकी वजह से फिर जो है वो tragedy होती है वहाँ. उसके बाद the medieval tragedy is to a large extent in the Christian tradition. There is also tragic fall in medieval age because of fortune, which does not discriminate. हाँ, ये जो medieval tragedy है इसके अंदर fate का बड़ा रोल है, and fate does not discriminate between the good and bad, you know that. उसके बाद उसने रेनेसां एज के बारे में कहा है उसने कि the Renaissance tragedy is in the tradition of medieval tragedy. In that in both the tragedies, the emphasis is on the fall of famous men. However, the difference lies in the method and effects of tragedy. In the tragedy, the stress is on proper construction and effect of tragedy. Renaissance tragedy is not concerned with metaphysical questions. Now you will go, you will read this, and we shall discuss in the evening, tomorrow in the evening, the same time, 7 o'clock. And if you have got any questions, any problem which I have not been able to explain, I am ready to help you. So 7 बजे फिर हम आपके साथ मीट करेंगे और वो मीटिंग हम नहीं बोलेंगे ज़्यादा, आपकी तरफ से होगा कि आपको अगर कोई मसला है इसको पढ़िएगा जा कर के, जो हमने दिया है आपको, ये आपकी फरमाइश थी, तो इसको जाकर पढ़िएगा आप पहले और अंडरलाइन कीजिए। अगर कोई चीज़ ऐसी है which I have not been able to explain in this lecture, you will ask me. So with this we come to the end